Eskimo pie.
There's nothing like an Eskimo pie.
We're changing our look.
Because you think I'm gonna eat this after they did the Aunt Jemima? No.
Sambo's has a new menu just for them.
The new name of Dixie Beer. It's Faubourg Brewing Company.
Have you ever stopped to think about the origins of your favorite foods and brands? Believe it or not, some of the most iconic names in food history were once built on racist imagery that reinforced harmful stereotypes. From Aunt Jemima to Eskimo pie, many brands have faced major rebrands after realizing how their names and logos perpetuated offensive messages. Let's take a look at some of the foods once normal, but now banned or changed for their controversial pasts. Aunt Jemima.
Good morning, ma'am. This is our Aunt Jemima Buttermilk Complete Pancake Mix. Sure. It's a great pancake.
Is that Aunt Jemima now has a new name?
Because you think I'm gonna eat this after they did the Aunt Jemima? No.
Let's talk about pancakes, because who doesn't love pancakes, right? But Aunt Jemima wasn't just about fluffy stacks and sweet syrup. The brand, launched in 1889, featured a black woman as its mascot based on the mammy stereotype, a harmful caricature of a subservient happy housemaid. Yeah, not exactly appetizing. For over a century, this imagery was splashed across millions of breakfast tables, normalizing outdated and offensive tropes. But in 2021, after much backlash and calls for change, Quaker Oats said, "Hold the syrup," and retired Aunt Jemima. They rebranded it as Pearl Milling Company, named after the mill where the mix was created. While some folks miss the old name, most agree it was time to flip the script. Pun intended. After all, pancakes should bring people together, not serve a side of racism with breakfast. What do you think? Sweet progress or overdue change? Uncle Ben's.
My rice is all stuck together.
Well, you didn't use Uncle Ben's.
Rice is rice.
Uncle Ben's converted brand is different. Look, this rice is sticky and starchy. Uncle Ben's is separate.
We're changing our look.
Did you know that Uncle Ben's rice wasn't always called Ben's Original? Back in the 1940s, this popular rice brand featured the image of an old black man in a bow tie. Sure, it was a recognizable logo, but it also came with a heavy load of stereotypes. The name Uncle wasn't just friendly branding. It was rooted in a time when black men weren't called Mr. as a way to deny them respect. Awkward, right? Fast forward to 2020, and Mars Inc. finally decided it was time to cook up some change. They dropped the old branding and went with Ben's Original. No bow ties, no loaded imagery, just rice. Straightforward and respectful. It's like the brand took a long overdue breath of fresh air. This move wasn't just about rebranding, it was about saying goodbye to outdated ideas and serving up values like equity and respect. Eskimo pie.
Eskimo pie.
There's nothing like an Eskimo pie.
After nearly 100 years, Eskimo pie ice cream will get a new name.
Ever heard of an ice cream bar causing controversy? Let's talk about the Eskimo pie. Now, Eddie's Pie. Introduced in 1921, this chocolate-covered vanilla ice cream bar was an instant hit. It was even marketed as the first treat to mix ice cream and chocolate coating together. But here's where it gets messy. The term Eskimo. Sounds harmless, right? Not quite. Turns out Eskimo was a name slapped onto indigenous Arctic peoples, like the Inuit and Yupik, by colonizers. It's considered a slur because it wasn't chosen by the people it labeled. Fast forward to 2020, and the world started paying closer attention to how language impacts marginalized communities. Dreyer's Grand Ice Cream realized it was time to give this classic treat a new identity. In 2021, they rebranded it as Eddie's Pie, ditching the offensive name but keeping the iconic flavor. So next time you grab one, you're enjoying a little scoop of progress with your chocolatey goodness. Sambo's Restaurants.
Sambo's has beefed up its menu with 3 delicious roast beef favorites.
You can dine for $1.99 at Sambo's.
Sambo's has a new menu just for them.
Did you know there used to be a restaurant chain called Sambo's? Yeah, that name hasn't aged well. Back in 1957 when it opened, the name referenced the story of Little Black Sambo, a children's book with, let's say, highly problematic depictions of a South Indian boy. The restaurant didn't stop at just the name. It went all in, decorating its locations with imagery from the book, including caricatures of black children. Not exactly a recipe for inclusivity. By the 1970s, people started calling them out. Activists and customers were like, what year is this? The backlash grew louder, and by the 1980s, the company had to wave the white flag, well, metaphorically, and rebrand its remaining locations with less controversial names. Lesson learned was that pancakes taste better without a side of racism. Today, Sambo's serves as a reminder that some ideas should stay in the past where they belong. Cream of wheat.
We'd gather round the table for some nice warm cream of wheat. People actually talk to each other. Nowadays, everything is rush, rush, rush.
Why start out with cold cereal when you can have the warmth of cream of wheat in an instant? Now try new cinnamon toast.
Let's talk about cream of wheat, a breakfast staple with a history that's anything but comforting. For years, the box featured a smiling black chef, an image many of us probably didn't think twice about. But this wasn't just a generic chef. The character was based on the offensive Rasta stereotype, which came from minstrel shows and portrayed black people as happy-go-lucky servants. Not exactly the wholesome start to your morning they were going for, right? Fast forward to 2020 when B&G Foods finally said, yeah, maybe this isn't okay, and decided to retire the chef. It was part of a broader reckoning over racist branding. Think Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben's. Turns out slapping a smile on harmful stereotypes doesn't make them any less harmful. So now cream of wheat comes without the side of awkward history. Progress may have taken decades, but better late than never. Dixie Beer.
When you need a beer that's cool and smooth, just tell them,
Give me a Dixie.
What makes Dixie Beer the right beer for New Orleans? It's sophisticated and laid back.
The new name of Dixie Beer. It's Faubourg Brewing Company.
Did you know there was once a beer named Dixie Beer? Sounds like something straight out of a Civil War reenactment, right? Founded in New Orleans in 1907, Dixie Beer brewed up controversy with its name. Why? The term Dixie often represents the Old South, conjuring images of the Confederacy and its ties to slavery. Not exactly the vibe you want while cracking open a cold one. But in 2020, the world wasn't having it anymore. In the wake of global conversations about racial equality, the owners of Dixie Beer decided it was time for a rebrand. They swapped out Dixie for something that better reflected their New Orleans roots: Faubourg Brewing Company. Faubourg is a local term for neighborhoods, and honestly, it's much more inviting. But cheers to progress, even if it took over a century. Frito Bandito.
Maybe you like better some lead, huh?
Citizens, protect yourself. Always buy two and hide one for you. There may be a Frito Bandito in your house.
The Frito Bandito. Have you heard of him? Back in 1967, Frito's Corn Chips introduced this cartoon mascot, a cheeky Mexican bandit with a sombrero, mustache, and an over-the-top accent. The idea was simple: make people laugh and crave snacks. But the execution? Let's just say it aged like a bag of chips left open too long. The Bandito wasn't just a quirky character, he leaned hard into negative stereotypes of Mexican people, portraying them as bandits. Advocacy groups like the National Mexican-American Anti-Defamation Committee stepped in, calling out how the character perpetuated harmful cliches. The backlash grew louder, and by 1971, Frito-Lay decided it was time to retire him. To appeal to kids, the Bandito even had a jingle. But if you sang it today, you'd probably cringe. Times change, and so does our understanding of what's funny versus what's offensive. Robertson's Gollywog. Let's talk about the Robertson's Gollywog Jam mascot. You might be wondering, what in the world is a gollywog? Well, this was a cartoonish black doll with exaggerated features used as the face of Robertson's Jam for almost 100 years. Yeah, you heard that right, 100 years. The brand didn't think anything was wrong with it, even as people started protesting in the 1960s. The Gollywog, with its big red lips, frizzy hair, and exaggerated eyes, was meant to be a cute mascot, but instead it became a racist stereotype. Not exactly the sweetest image for a jam, huh? Despite all the protests, Robertson's stuck with it, even resisting change well into the 1980s. But eventually, in 2001, they said, okay, fine, we get it, and finally pulled the Gollywog off their labels. Darky Toothpaste.
Smile a darky smile for me.
Darky toothpaste gives you a cool, fresh, tingling taste. Darky with fluoride protects your teeth for clean, brighter smiles. Darky toothpaste.
Let's talk about Darky toothpaste. Yes, you heard that right. Darky toothpaste was launched in Hong Kong in the 1920s, and boy did it have some questionable branding. The toothpaste featured a minstrel-like image of a black man with a top hat and bow tie, a caricature straight out of a racist past that no one should be forgetting anytime soon. Now don't worry, by 1989 people started raising eyebrows and the company knew they were in hot water. So they renamed it Darlie and swapped the offensive image with a more neutral figure. But the Chinese name still translates to black person toothpaste. Yep, they might have changed the label, but the stench of controversy stuck around. It's wild to think that something like this was once sold worldwide, right? Imagine brushing your teeth with a history lesson on racial insensitivity. Not exactly the minty fresh vibe we want. Land O'Lakes butter.
What's in Land O'Lakes butter with canola oil? Only 3 real ingredients.
Have you ever looked at a butter package and thought, something seems off here? Well, that's exactly what happened with Land O'Lakes. For almost a century, their logo featured a Native American woman named Mia, kneeling and holding a box of butter. Sounds innocent, but Mia's portrayal was pretty problematic. The image promoted a stereotype of indigenous women as submissive, docile, and romanticized. Not exactly the most accurate or respectful representation. In 2020, after much public outcry, Land O'Lakes decided it was time for a change. They removed Mia and replaced her with a beautiful nature scene. People cheered for this update. It was seen as a step in the right direction toward dismantling harmful stereotypes. It's clear that the world of food branding has come a long way, with these once popular products now rebranded to reflect more inclusive values. What do you think about these changes? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insightful content.